Hi everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Lian Ryan-Hume and this video is going to be about my diagnostic journey. So to those that don't know and kind of to bring everyone up to speed, I have been dealing with a neuromuscular disease. It's a rare degenerative neuromuscular disease since I was about 12 years old. I am now 27, so it's been a journey of about 15 and a half years actually. And I'm really glad to be able to kind of come on this platform and share my journey and kind of being able to connect with many others who may have similar experiences, but also at the same time to raise awareness to neuromuscular diseases in general and life with a disability / invisible illnesses as well. So like I shared on my Instagram, which I'll insert somewhere here, I actually ended up traveling to London last week. I took the train. It was about 5 hours from Edinburgh, which is where I'm based right now, up here in Scotland. But I went down because I had an appointment with Professor Mary Riley, who's a genius in her field when it comes to neurological disorders, especially CMT. And that actually came with quite a huge announcement after visiting her and her colleagues and kind of being tested and spending about half a day at the hospital, which I was not expecting, to be honest. But yeah, so like I said, to bring everyone up to speed, when I started developing my symptoms when I was about 12 years old, it has been a journey of not really having a clear diagnosis throughout these past 15 years. So since I was about 12 years old, what the doctors always said, it was that they thought it was either CMT or CIDP. And just again, I'm not a medical person, I don't have any medical background, but from my patient experience and kind of knowledge, my understanding, that CMT is a genetic disorder that impacts the nerves and the muscles, whereas CIDP is actually an autoimmune disease. And so it was a very long journey, but I'm really, glad that to some extent I was able to come to a full circle. We're not there yet, but we're definitely a step closer in that sense. And what I mean about kind of getting a step closer is that basically throughout the years, like I said, this kind of, do I have CMT? Do I have CIDP? Which one is it? Obviously, each comes with its own different treatments / kind of symptom relief strategies. And to me, I think I grew up always in some sort of a limbo when it came to my disease, the illness that I deal with. And I never knew what it was, but I knew that if it was CIDP, then it meant I could have certain therapies, be it IVIG, plasma exchange, biotherapy, which was the step we were considering last year. Whereas with CMT, I was told that there's not really much to do at this point. There's no cure for it. It would just kind of revolve more around gene therapy and just kind of, maintaining and trying to preserve whatever muscles and functions I have at this point. And so naturally, as you can imagine, I really wanted it to be CIDP. For me, knowing that I wanted it to be CIDP, and at the same time fearing it being CMT, I never knew what it was. And let me tell you, every single nerve examination, medical examinations and tests that they've done to me have just constantly contradicted themselves over the years. It would be a few years in which my medical tests and results of all these different examinations would really point to it being CIDP, whereas other years it would just show as if I have a CMT or some other type of neurological disorder besides CIDP. So you can imagine the confusion that actually arises from that. But over kind of the last years, a lot of my examinations kept showing CIDP, and that's when doctors decided to go ahead and give me IVIG treatments for about 1.5 years to kind of suppress my immune system and see if that helps. But unfortunately for me, actually, my condition kept deteriorating. It also extended to the hands and arms besides just my legs and feet. And that's when a lot of the doctors started saying, well, maybe it is then CMT, maybe it is the genetic version and not the autoimmune one. But at the same time, research also showed that, IVIG is a treatment that, yes, you can give to CIDP patients and 93% of them will respond to it, but then there's 7% that won't. And I thought maybe I'm in that 7%. And that's when the whole concept of trying to figure out, do I go ahead with plasma exchange or biotherapy and to see if that helps, or steroids, or do I continue this, how do I continue? Like, what's the next step? What are my next options? And for me, I've decided to continue that diagnostic journey down in Oxford when I was living there over the past 2 years when I was doing my master's. And obviously because of COVID, a lot of the exams and tests I had to do got delayed, which meant that only by the end of my time in Oxford were we even able to start talking about potential treatments to be given, but we just basically stopped everything. But I did receive a letter after kind of getting referred to Professor Riley, and I received the letter that I have an appointment, and that appointment took place last week. And I came there prepared with all my medical papers. I even brought I brought with me actually my shorts, knowing, being in plenty medical / nerve examinations, you realize that you need to be with shorts, kind of probably mid-thigh in terms of the length, so they can really examine you, especially with the EMG and NCIV. So, I remember just walking in with my black tights and then asking where is the bathroom so I can get changed to my shorts, because let's face it, also London in January is very cold, so I was not going to be walking around with my shorts in the streets. But I changed to my shorts, walked into the examination room, and myself, Professor Riley, and 3 of her colleagues as well, which later also we had another colleague join us. But we just sat down there and I gave her all the results, like all the medical papers I had from recent years, all the examinations I did. We also went through a very extensive medical history to try and identify certain patterns if there were any. And after that, I had a full nerve examination. And once we were done with all of this, we went ahead actually to get an EMG, an updated EMG, by one of her colleagues who's an expert in that as well. And he went ahead and started performing it, and I'll insert some pictures of what it actually looks like. But really what you want to be thinking about is you're basically getting electrical shocks constantly, and they're trying to test how long it takes for that signal to transport, I guess, throughout your body, and that will determine oftentimes whether there's any problems with the myelin sheet. Again, I'll try and insert some photos around here so you can understand what I'm talking about, but I will again reiterate the fact that I do not have any medical qualification or medical knowledge. This is all really from my research as a patient who's very interested in understanding a bit more when I'm sitting in those doctor rooms. So he started doing all of this, giving me those electrical shocks, which I've done about 9 of those tests, maybe 10 now, and let's just say it's not fun, especially because of my nerve damage. They have to really go high in the frequencies, which means it's definitely much more painful. And then at the end of it, there's also the needle, which is kind of about the size of my pinky. And they have to insert it into your muscles and make you move your muscle by like stretching, lifting your leg, lifting your arm as well. So I had it kind of inserted in my bicep directly as I was flexing, and then having to actually pull and push, which was torture, but it was needed and I get it, so I just sucked it up basically. And then I also had it in my quadricep in 2 locations. And after we finished that section of the examination, I was also seen by a physiotherapist who had to kind of pay attention to the way I walk, trying to offer me some help and aid in different products and assistive aids that could help my walking, because I actually walk with drop foot in both of my feet. And that was also another session, which actually turned out to something else, and opportunities to participate on panels to do with kind of patient advocacy and making sure that research, especially genetic research and neuromuscular research being more accessible to minority groups. So I'm really looking forward to that participation. I also got invited to do an interview for research around self-management of people with neuromuscular diseases. And again, it was just so great to be able to have that opportunity to talk more and advocate more about patients' decision-making in the whole treatment process, because oftentimes, it's very important that when you're trying to find a solution or trying to find a treatment or trying to find some sort of exercises of routine even, it really needs to fit the lifestyle of the patient. Otherwise, it's not, the patient is not going to follow through on that. So we had a very, productive conversation, and I appreciate that. But after we finished my physiotherapist session and again examinations, she also gave me some exercises to do at home to help with certain symptoms I have. And so after I finished my session with the physiotherapist, I sat outside in the waiting room while everyone was discussing. The 5 colleagues were discussing among themselves my case, and I got called back into the room. I sat down. And I remember Professor Riley just looking at me and just saying that she doesn't ever say it unless she's 100% sure, and she is sure in my case that what I do have is CMT, which is Charcot-Marie tooth, and that's the name of the 3 doctors who found kind of this illness and labeled it. And I don't know, I was very shocked sitting and kind of hearing her say it with that, with such a certain assertiveness, such definitiveness as well. And I just remember kind of just like hearing everything and just looking at her and not realizing exactly what to say or how to respond. But she explained to me that, her full examination, her colleague's examination, I basically ticked a lot of things with CMT. The only problem is every time I do genome sequencing, I would come back negative. And she explained that as we know, when it comes to genes and kind of medical development and everything, every year it changes, every couple of months as well. So even in the last year, from the last time I did my genome sequencing, there were 4 new genes that were identified to be related to CMT. And she thinks I might have one of them. And if not, then I probably have some other type of gene mutation that the research just doesn't know about yet, and we need to wait. And she basically explained to me that as of now, they have about 70% of gene mutations that cause CMT. And they believe they have 70%. And she was just like, let's hope that you're in those 70% and we'll be able to identify what it is. And the reason it is quite important to identify what gene mutation I have is from multiple, there's multiple reasons for it, be it from a research point of view for future patients who may have that gene, and they'll be able to not have to go through 15 years of a limbo and not knowing their diagnosis, but rather be able to actually know what it is. But also from a gene therapy point of view, she was explaining that, I'm still young, and hopefully if they identify the gene mutation, then at least I can get gene therapy to ensure that the situation actually stops where it is right now and doesn't progress. Because with CMT, a lot of the time the progression is very steep during teenage years, and then it goes dormant a little bit, and then after a few decades, it can ramp up again and kind of progress. And therefore, she's really hoping that we'll be able to stop it before it progresses any further. And I can be in this state. And of course, the obvious when it comes to genes is kids. So knowing what gene mutation it is means that we'll be able to prepare a bit better when it comes to actually, thinking about having children and making sure that the gene is not passed on or active when it's passed on. So there was a lot in that meeting. I finished the meeting and I just remember after she just explained everything and she was like, I know you know what CMT is, but let me explain to you more. And she, pulled out her graphs and pictures and showed it to me and explained to me and told me about all the possible scenarios and everything to think about. She also said that in general, she believes that it's going to take them between 6 months to 3 years until they actually identify my gene mutation. And I just immediately answered saying, you know, I've been waiting for 15.5 years. I think I can wait a bit longer, so that's fine. But I also got to sign on joining a number of national and international researchers that she's leading and she's a part of. And all of that is really in the hopes of raising a bit more awareness, understanding a bit more about neuromuscular diseases that are genetic. And for me, it was a no-brainer to participate in any sort of research that may help other people on their diagnostic journey, so they don't have to go through what I did. And yeah, at the same time, I know that it will help me as well being a part of these research, because it means if someone else has very similar exhibition of symptoms to mine, we're able to kind of identify or look for other links. But at this point, honestly, all I can say is I was just relieved. I was relieved because I was no longer in that limbo situation. I left the hospital and I went to grab lunch before I had to catch my train up to Scotland. And I remember going into this restaurant, lovely restaurant, it's called Ciao Bella, and I just remember sitting down, having a glass of wine, eating a lasagna, and calling my husband, Joe. And I was talking to him, and at one point, I was kind of talking to him, and he was like, "Oh, you sound actually kind of positive, not what I was expecting to hear given the diagnosis of CMT," because I was fearing that diagnosis for so long. And I explained to him that because it was the first time that I was sitting in a room with doctors, experts, professors, and they were doing exactly what I wanted my doctors to be doing all along, and that is to fight and to try and search every book to understand what is it that I have. And the feeling of being heard, of being listened, of being validated as a patient, I cannot even describe how powerful that is, how reassuring that is for patients, especially chronic patients, because it's you know, it's such a long journey of finding those doctors, and I'm just so grateful that I was referred to them. And I'm so grateful to have had that session and know that I'm in good hands, as they say at this point. And I really, really want that to be the case for every single person who's dealing with a diagnosis that is unknown at this point, to any person who's dealing with a neuromuscular disease, any person who's dealing with an invisible illness and a chronic condition. Just know that your amazing doctors are out there, your amazing practitioners are out there. It may take a bit of longer time to find them, but once you do, it's such a great feeling, and it transforms the life of a patient in an amazing way. But yeah, I think for me, I just had so much to absorb, so much to process. I'm still processing it, definitely. It's been a week now since the session I've had, and I don't know, it's just, at least now I also feel like I belong to some sort of community. Like, for so many years I was a part of the Facebook group of, CIDP and the Facebook group of CMT, and every time anyone would post something in there, I just never knew where I fell. I never knew where I belonged to, and that also made it very hard, because as a lot of people with chronic illnesses would know, and just in general, even patients would know, is you want to have a community. You want to know that you're not the only one going through this, because it can be very lonely and isolating. And so having that group of people who, even if they don't have the exact same thing as you, actually know that process and that journey, and knowing that you have that group of patients and people who know your journey, who've been through a similar journey, is just so valuable. And I think for me, that was also another reason why I really wanted to make this video, is because I want to be able to reach beyond my community and my friends and family. And I wanted to put it out there for other patients, other family members of patients with medical conditions, to see that and hope that somehow it may resonate with them. So I'm really looking forward to make more videos around this topic and others, but definitely let me know down in the comments what would be a video you'd be interested in seeing, a topic you'd be interested in me discussing. And for now, make sure to not forget to hit the subscribe button so you're always notified when I'm putting more videos out there. And thank you for finding this video, for watching it until the end. And I'm so excited to have you join our community. See you soon!